this is a crazy talk. This is going to be about my career, how I became a professor, and this is probably instructional for you from the standpoint that you probably don't know how I got here and where I am today. So this is called Michael Zyda, American Professor, and you'll know why I put that there at the end. And I think I showed this slide before. This is like my one-page bio, but this is going to be like 60 pages long. I have a slide for every year of my life since like 1973. Okay, this is crazy. So I started at UC San Diego in La Jolla. I was an undergraduate there trying to figure out what my major was. I was a research assistant in the chemistry department, and I had a professor who says, can you learn to program a computer, teach yourself computer graphics, and learn how to write grant proposals? I said, sure. So I made a computer animated film with Bud Tribble and Bill Atkinson, if you know who they are, from the early days of Apple Computer. And our animated film was called Tainted Sky, and we used an IBM 1800 computer with a Tektronix storage oscilloscope on it. We had an animation camera that was used in Citizen Kane on it, and this is shown at the very first March 1974 International Computer Film Festival. Okay, this is the very first film festival ever, which is a big deal. All right, next. 1974, I got the Evanston Sutherland Picture System 1 serial number 1. Holographic line drawing system, 5,000 lines per second. I spent all my time trying to build real-time animated displays for molecular modeling and quantum chemistry. I started learning Unix. So I think of Unix as learn Unix forever, right? 1975, 76, I added a floating point processor array system into this. I designed a control software for a touchy-feely force feedback device. You could grab it and steer your graphics display, and if it was a molecule that was going to push you away, it'd push you away. It's very cool. And this is 1975. It's like the Spider system developed much later in Japan, 10 years later, in fact. I have a bachelor's in bioengineering from there, a minor in Spanish literature from UC San Diego. Then I went to UMass Amherst. I was there 76, 78. I joined ACM SIGGRAPH. I worked on modeling and simulating large-scale processors for use in molecular dynamics. I built a 500 processor, a simulation for a 500 processor system that was very much like a Carnegie Mellon CM Star computer. I was in the neurocybernetics program. I took 2 years of AI and neuroscience courses and none of the fundamentals of computer science. And I have a master's in computer and information science from there in 1978. 1978 to 84, I went to Washington University in St. Louis. I started in a double PhD in physiology, biophysics, and computer science, and did that for 2 years. I started to swim 90 minutes every day. I worked in the computer systems laboratory, designing graphics software to support the computer systems lab, designing graphics hardware. We made our own graphics workstations. We actually manufactured all of 16 of them, and we got to have lots of fun because we made 8, and then we went to make the 9th one, and one of the integrated circuits was discontinued. So all of a sudden we had to put a different integrated circuit in there, which meant microcode worked differently on the last 8 as opposed to the first 8. So this is fun. I worked on contour surface display generation. I worked on surface reconstruction, and a lot of what I worked on was how do you build graphics algorithms into graphics hardware. So there's a lot of pre-GPU architectures. So if I'd stuck with it, probably would have invented GPUs at some point. I worked on conformational analysis for molecular modeling and spun it off into a startup called Tripos Associates, which was acquired by Evanston Sutherland. I was in the first place team of the ACM National Computer Programming Contest, and my first paper in SIGGRAPH was 1982. And that paper in 1982 is the precursor work for the Marching Cubes algorithm. So if you know that, I finished a PhD in 1984. In computer science and algorithm-directed architectures for real-time surface display generation. And I came to Naval Postgraduate School as assistant professor. And I came here, and I don't know if you think about it, NPS in 1984, in computer science and in the whole school, they hadn't hired any assistant professors for 17 years. All right, so I got here, and all the professors are 17, 18, 19 years older than me. All right, they hired 11 assistant professors in that year. It was like some amazing year. And so I started here then. I almost immediately, I couldn't afford to live here, by the way. I started at $36,000 a year. And I went to my dean, and I talked to my dean, I said, I can't afford to live here, I'm gonna leave. And he said, you can consult. And I said, were there any limitations on consulting? And he says, you can consult for anyone from whom the U.S. government doesn't buy anything. And so I said, okay, that means I must go outside the United States. And so I helped form a company called Japan Tech Services, Kabashiki Kaisha, which is in Shiba Daimon near Tokyo Tower. And they served as my agent. I taught myself how to speak Japanese. And at this time, SGI, Silicon Graphics workstations, did about 500 polygons per second. They had no Z buffer back then. So this is when computer graphics real time was like hardly working, as you would say. And the only reason I put this up here is I'm listed as consultant somewhere there in Japanese. All right. 1986, I consulted for Hitachi Works again. I helped Hitachi Works. They designed power plants and substations and nuclear power plants. And they wanted to replace large-scale plastic models of nuclear power plants with a CAD system. So I helped them design and architect the CAD system that's used for all Hitachi plant construction design. I went to a workshop on interactive 3D graphics in '86, which got me very inspired that there were other people who wanted to focus on real time. We built a FogM simulator at the Naval Postgraduate School on an SGI Iris 2400, which had, I think, 2 megabytes of memory. And a Motorola 68000 or 68010, it was 68010, it was pretty slow. And that was when SimNet did its first demo before we saw it. I became associate professor at NPS in '87. I consulted for Hitachi Works a third time, and I went there ready to give them a course on image synthesis, and they said, no, we want you to give us a course on networking. Of course, I knew nothing absolutely whatsoever about networking. So I taught myself networking and came back with networking software. We took 16 SGI workstations in Hitachi Shi, hooked them all together to make a big 4x4 display, very high resolution display. And I handed this software back to my NPS students when I came back, and we built a vehicle, a VEH simulator, which allowed you to play against the FogM missile simulator. And it became the first thing that was ever called a network virtual environment. All right. 1988, we built a thing called Moving Platform Simulator 1, kind of like take that and make it more generalized. I began planning the Symposium on Interactive 3D Graphics. In 1989, we built NPS 2 and 3. And in March of '90, we built NPS Net 1. This is like a one-student project, a guy named Dave Pratt, who ended up being my PhD student about the same time Don was a PhD student. And I chaired the first Symposium on Interactive 3D Graphics at Snowbird. In April of 1990, I got tenure. I still hadn't bought a home. I was going to quit because I hadn't bought a home, and I went and did a bunch of consulting. I went from no money to enough money for a down payment and bought a home in Carmel by the Sea, where I still live. During weekends and during the week, I live in LA. 1991, we did SIGGRAPH Tomorrow's Realities Gallery with a 1 million polygon per second SGI VGX machine with NPS Net 1. I think you could do one texture. That's pretty funny. And we were the only networked demo at SIGGRAPH 1991. We had 3 machines. And we had a guy come by from DARPA who goes, I should be funding you. And he gave us like 1.4 million a year for like 3 years. So it was cool. All right, we built NPS Net 2 in '92. I was appointed to the National Research Council Behavior and Social Sciences Commission on VR. 1993, built NPS Net 3, NPS Net Stealth, which was SimNet compliant. So all of a sudden, for $60,000 workstation, you could play against SimNet. And I don't know if you tried to buy a SimNet station. At that time, they were $350,000. This got everyone very excited. April, I became full professor of '93. August, we did NPS Net 4, demoed at SIGGRAPH 93. We had a T1 link to DARPA and to San Diego. SIGGRAPH was in Los Angeles at the Anaheim Convention Center. And we had 60 machines. It was DIS compliant. We did this joint with the Air Force Institute of Technology. And we had 1,000-watt, 8-channel sound, which like when you fired a missile and it exploded, it was like great. And very interesting. We had this experiment. Is the Air Force guys were doing their demos, and they never liked the noise because you're in the airplane. You're way up in the sky, and you don't hear explosions, right? So I remember one time I went away for lunch, and I came back, and there were only Air Force guys in their booth, and Air Force guys in the booth had turned all the sound off. So there was nobody in line whatsoever at all at our booth. I went back, I turned the sound back on. We had 50 people in like 10 minutes. So young people like to go towards big, noisy things, all right? You probably know that already.
That's still the case.
Still the case. It's still the case. 1994, I built this thing called the NPSnet iPort demo. This was built for Anita Jones, who was Director of Defense Research and Engineering at the time. And this project started on Christmas Eve in 1993. I got a call from her office saying, how fast could we have a demo on the 14th of February showing a fully instrumented bodysuit network virtual environment. And we said, of course, yeah, why not? We'll just like blow Christmas and New Year's off. And we actually had this up and running with big screens on a Silicon Graphics Reality Engine 2. And he's on a device built by Sarcos, which is a force feedback pedal device. It can launch a 200-pound man 6 feet into the air. It's totally cool. It's a rubber M16 with tracking on it so you can point, but you're wearing a head-mounted display, which means if you come up to like hit the rifle, you hit the head-mounted display and you really can't shoot in the right place. And all the Special Forces guys who got in this device, they messed up their aim for like a couple weeks afterwards, is what they said. They blamed us. 95, we built this thing called NPSnet Treadport demo with Sarcos once again. You're on a hospital treadmill, there is a robot arm around you. And so there's the 3-walled cave, and you can kind of walk to the left, and it would re-slew you centered, but it would change the screen. All right, so but there's also a guy with a dead man switch in case the robot arm decides to throw you. Well, there's also that on the other guy too, but everything was good. We did a very cool demo. 95, this report came out. I started on this in 1992. It's called Virtual Reality, Scientific and Technological Challenges. This is from the National Research Council. I've served on 11 different boards and commissions of the National Research Council, and they put all those book covers in here to let you know that this is part of my career as well. But this one came out right at the Symposium on Interactive 3D Graphics in Monterey at the Hyatt, if you remember that, which was remembered primarily because I raised $250,000 in donation money, which all went to food. Which, if you've ever been to a conference with 250 people that spent that much money on food, it was pretty awesome. All right, this book, basically, NRC studies go to program managers in the government and to congressmen, and this tells them, here's how you should spend your RDT&E money in virtual reality. And this book, I think I gave 33 presentations on this because the chair of the committee didn't like to travel. It was Nat Durlock, and I ended up giving all kinds of talks, like the American Psychological Association keynote on this back then. 96, moves degree, master's was approved. It was intended to be a pragmatic mix of computer science and operations analysis. And in fact, at that time, I have to tell you the story because it's kind of funny, because the provost at that time said, I'm not approving any new degrees. And so I left his office discouraged. I had printed up a brochure. I listed myself as chairman, and I put draft, of course, on there. And I asked his secretary, I said, when is Dick out of town? She goes, oh, he's going to be a month in Wyoming, or was it Montana? One of those two, in July. I said, great. So we submitted the program into the academic council in July, and with a letter from a 3-star Admiral, Vice Admiral Davis, who approved the degree and said he was going to provide $2 million a year in funding.
I can't get the answer to that on app.
And we ended up having this program approved, and he came back from vacation. He goes, I'm not going to appoint you chair, and I'm not giving you any budget. I said, I don't need budget, I have budget. And we had 40 students come in fall and spring semester every year for the years I was running moves. So we had like 80 students. It was great, a year. No, we had actually more than that. It was a wonderful, big program. Now you're only 10 people, all right? So I don't know what happened, but it was big when we started. I know. All right, 96, NPSnet omnidirectional treadmill demo. This is 2 treadmills made out of rollers. It's like walking on a piece of ice. So you have a mountain climbing harness here, and you've got your rubber M16. We have 3-walled cave, and we had money to do like 1 month of demo of this. And we ran out of money at the end of October 96. We laid everyone off. I began another study for the National Research Council Computer Science and Telecommunications Board called Linking Entertainment and Defense. All my consulting in Japan died because of their economy died, all right? And So I started consulting elsewhere. I started consulting for Paramount. So, all right. So this study came out in 1997. This is a study that changed all of Department of Defense to make the next generation simulation systems using game engines and entertainment technology. It also was used to found ICT. Right. Our MPSNet research group, we changed our focus to what was on the NRC report. We started building our own game engine because you couldn't get game engines cheaply or easily back then. My January through September project was to do a thing called the Paramount Story Drive Engine Project with the Star Trek Voyager TV series. So I was on set with Voyager and the writers, and it was really fun. And Kate Mulgrew, who just is in the news, so it was exciting. And so I was in the front. I was in the computer system, kind of like here, for the guards that go up. And they oh yeah, just park over there, and I just kind of walk around through the sets and Voyager, and then I'd go find other things that we're shooting and eat lunch with the cast. It was really cool. It was a fun event. All right, 1998 was the internet boom, and I don't know if none of you were here at that time. It was impossible to hire anybody with a computer science degree into the government at that time. Everybody wanted to go become an instant millionaire by working in the internet. And in fact, some of my consulting was for Muse3D.com, which was making a 3D web browser that was kind of cool, and SpiritChannel.com, which is founded by Isaac Tigret. If you know Isaac Tigret was the co-founder of the Hard Rock Cafe and the House of Blues, and SpiritChannel.com was to be an online website with all of the Dalai Lama's speeches and talks, and it was interesting, and he was kind of crazy, and anyway, it was fun. I would fly to his place, which was in the Trump Tower near Central Park, and we'd get in a limousine and drive around. Then we'd stop at a 5-star restaurant and eat lunch and spend all the money that way. Okay. 1999, January through June, I drafted the research agenda and operating plan to found the USC Institute for Creative Technologies for the chief scientist of the U.S. Army, Mike Andrews. And Mike Andrews said he loved the NRC study I did, and could I turn this into a research lab that would be at USC? And so I wrote that, and in fact, through that January through June period, all of the Army program managers were told I was going to end up being the director of ICT, which actually did not happen. USC appointed someone else to be director, which is the way sometimes these things go. Yeah.
Do you want questions at the end, or?
You have a particular question about this, you can ask, but make it short, because we don't want to lose the rhythm.
I'm just wondering, how do you get an audience with the chief scientist of the Army?
Oh, they came looking for me.
Came looking for you.
Yeah, because I don't know if any of you know Mike Macedonia, who's my former PhD student from here. Mike Macedonia was working for the chief scientist of the Army at that time. So Mike was a retired major in the U.S. Army, and he was like in the office next to Schwarzkopf during Gulf War I, and he had a great career and came here to be a PhD student. In fact, his career was really weird, because I think they passed him over like 2 weeks before his PhD defense, and they actually sent him a note saying, you must leave the Naval Postgraduate School immediately. And he's like, I'm like 2 weeks away from my defense. So I think he went on leave or something like that, and finished his PhD, and then he was sent off to somewhere else. Anyway, he took early retirement. That's what he did. So he had to pay back his tuition from the postgraduate school, $27,000 or something like that, if I recall correctly. MOVE's PhD program was finally approved. MOVE's academic group, created with me as chair. This is interesting because I got a Microsoft Word document mailed to me from the NPS provost at that time that appointed me as chair of the MOVE's academic group, and it had no signature. It was just here, yes, you're appointed. I'm like, oh, okay. I had already been chair for like 3 years. I told him he couldn't appoint me. I just was appointing myself. So that's how MOVE's degree got founded. All right. This book came out, Network Virtual Environments, Design Implementation. Sandeep Singhal and I wrote this. I started working with him when he was a student at Stanford. He was a student of David Sheraton. David Sheraton's students founded Google. Sergey Brin, and I forget the other guy's name right now. What?
Larry Page.
Larry Page, exactly. The only reason I remember Sergey Brin is I am advisor to a startup that is funded by Sergey Brin right now. All right, I'll put that later in the talk. Sandeep and I wrote this book. This turns out to be the book that tells you how to build the online infrastructure for network games. Sandeep today is director for cloud at Google. right? And before that, he was director for networking for the Windows operating system at Microsoft. So, all right. I'm going to skip a few. 99. This book came out, Design the New Millennium. This was for the Aeronautics and Space Engineering Board. And I drew the cover of this book. And I did and I also co-wrote the science fiction story that opens this report up, which is basically the future NASA, you will design VR systems in virtual reality. And this was supposed to be virtual reality glasses. And this woman engineer is at the beach with her daughter as she's watching the virtual rockets launch. And I wanted red smoke, okay? Which is really stupid. I don't know why I wanted red smoke, because all American rockets have yellow smoke. Probably you should know that, or you already know that. And I mean, the strange thing about this is I couldn't find any red smoke, so I found a Chinese rocket that had red smoke that's actually a Chinese rocket on the cover of the Energy Study. I sent that to them as a draft. I didn't realize they went 24-hour turnaround. They just printed it without like asking. So when this book came out, there's a bunch of people in DC from Boeing and Lockheed Martin. The Lockheed Martin guys go, this is not our rocket. This must be a Boeing rocket. And then Boeing guys, this is not our rocket. It must be a Lockheed Martin rocket. And thank God they're on the opposite sides of the room. All right, I can only admit that now. All right, 2000, May through October, I did multiple interviews to be CTO for the Walt Disney Corporation and director of Disney Imagineering. And this is very exciting. They only interviewed 3 people. I ended up being their #1 candidate at the end, and they had a chief scientist who they made CTO. So I didn't get the job. In May of that same year, I started the America's Army game. And in October, I founded the Moves Institute with, I think we had $2 million starting, which is collecting everybody's research money and pooling it. And it was fun. It was great fun. 2001, these 2 patents were filed here at the Postgraduate School. I put these in there because they're historically important. This is the 9-axis sensor inside the Nintendo Wii U. These are the first 2 patents ever issued to faculty at the Naval Postgraduate School. They're the only 2 that have ever been licensed, which is kind of cool. And this was Eric Bachman, my PhD student, and Bob McGee, former faculty, helping Yoon from electrical engineering, myself, Doug McKinney, who was the contract engineer we hired, and this was fun. Moves in 2001, we got up to $10 million. We did a complete restart on America's Army in August of 2001. So we had started in May of 2000, and we had a lot of things that we were trying to figure out. We visited 19 Army posts and collected a lot of texturing and sound and graphics and things. And we didn't like what we put together. We hired a guy named Alex Maybury to work underneath Mike Capps at that time. And that made our game go fantastic. In 2002, at May, America's Army was announced at E3. You can see we have some really cool vehicles out on the front of the LA Convention Center. I had to collect these at 3:30 in the morning. This is after 9/11, so I'm out there in a jacket with a backpack on and waiting for, it was a camera, ready to take pictures of these guys arriving. And the Los Angeles Police Department stops me and goes, "Sir, what are you doing out here standing in front of the LA Convention Center at 3:30 in the morning?" I said, "I'm waiting for my missile launchers." I said, "I'm going to put them here. It's for the E3 conference. Because missile launchers. Who gave you permission to put missile launchers in front of the convention center?" I said, "Well, we got permission from the convention people. Can we call them up?" It's 3:30 in the morning. They're not going to answer their cell phone or anything. So we tried, and he was just about to like stick me in the back of his car when this giant truck comes up with 2 missile launchers on the back. And he goes, "Oh, this must be real because there's the missile launchers and we're putting them out here on the patio." And it was cool. I did like 200 interviews in that year. I mean, we were on the front page of the LA Times on the opening day of E3. It was super exciting and very fun. 2002, I was part of this 2020 Visions. This is for the Secretary of Commerce. So we're at the Secretary of Commerce office. And in fact, there's like a giant riot in downtown Washington, D.C. this day. So we had to sneak in through some interesting tunnels and things to get there. So I remember this is when I wore ties, right? I used to wear a tie here. 2002, I received the Pioneer Certificate from the Modeling and Simulation Professional Certification Commission, and there's 27 pioneers for this. It's up on a website somewhere. 2003, I was invited speaker at the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences DICE Summit. Very exciting. This is the best talk ever about the America's Army game. April, I did the symposium on interactive 3D graphics in Monterey again. May, we did America's Army at E3. This E3 was fantastic because we, it turns out you can't get permission to fly helicopters around downtown LA unless you're LAPD. And so what we did is we issued training orders to National Guard to do some, hang out some ropes out of helicopters and land on a parking lot across from the convention center, and that was awesome. I know, it was cool. It was totally fun. October 2003, Moves Institute finalist for World Technology Network. I'm gonna watch time here. Well, we're moving quickly. We were against Sony and IBM. Sony for the PlayStation 2 division. And so we were in pretty good shape then. November, I was made a permanent national associate of the National Academy of Science, which means I can ask to be on any committee I want. Doesn't that sound like an oxymoron, right? You get appointed to something like this, and it should be like you don't ever have to be on committees again. But this one lets me be on any committee I want and stop by the National Academy and get coffee anytime for free. All right, haven't done it yet. It's too far away. 2003, I chaired the review of all of NASA's Computing, Information, Communications Technology programs and put out this review of their aerospace technology enterprise. Here's the quad chart on America's Army, 1999 through 2004. This is funded from the Assistant Secretary of Army for Manpower and Reserve Affairs. And I think it was OPM money instead of RDT&E money, which probably violated Congress rules and all those things. But the game basically was one of the fastest growing online games of all time. At its time, we had 3 million plus registered players by 2004. It was the most effective marketing tool the Army ever created. The game is now being used as the basis for development of a large number of training simulations. And NPS involvement, I had 19 student theses directly on this project, 27 student theses facilitated by this project, 10 faculty involved, 30 staff. This is big. We only had 4 million a year. I mean, at this time, Moves had like 19 million. So it was only a little piece of Moves, but it was a great piece of Moves, and it was super exciting. All right. 2004, I began planning the USC Game Pipe Laboratory. We are in this near constant battle with the 2-star admiral who was the head of the postgraduate school at that time, who basically told me I could no longer work in games or virtual reality, and I had to find a different career if I wanted to stay at NPS. So, and then he filled in the swimming pool with sand. All right, so I quit on my birthday and went to USC. And America's Army went to its own place. In fact, when the Army grabbed hold of what was left of America's Army, I think the day before it had 26 people, and by the time the Army moved it to Fort Orbit, which is a temporary place, there were only 6 people left. And so it then took the Army 5 years to ship the next version of the game. We were shipping new versions every 90 days. So it was a disaster for the Army caused by an admiral. All right. 2004, I was a member of this committee, which was an assessment of NASA's aeronautics technology program. So NRC is a really important part of my life when I was here. 2005, I went to USC and became director of a USC Game Pipe Laboratory. And this is really pretty funny because I just called myself director of the Game Pipe Laboratory and founded it and asked USC for the domain for it, and just went and created my own program. And so you can appreciate this. I went and wrote the 18 new syllabi to create the program, put together the cover memos. I stuck it into the computer science department for approval. Now, the interesting thing is at that time, I was just temporary staff at ISI. So I wasn't faculty, so I couldn't actually attend the computer science meeting to answer questions. It's just cool. Because if you're not there, they can't ask you questions. And they voted unanimously yes to approve this program. Because I don't know if you knew what was happening in 2005, the internet crash had happened. And at this point in time, the number of people who are applying to USC in computer science went way, way down. There were exactly 25. And 18 of them switched into this degree by fall of 2006, when it was also completely approved. And 7 of them switched into computer science business, and there was 1 left in general CS. So this program, the program I founded, saved the computer science department at USC. I then was on another NRC committee, which would put out a report called ForceNet Implementation Strategy for the Naval Studies Board. I was the founding director of USC's Computer Science Games program and a professor of engineering practice since 2005 to 2019. I founded the Bachelor's and Master's in Computer Science Games, and I founded the year-long Advanced Games project course that forms the core of USC Games. We've now changed all of our branding just this last semester to USC Games. The USC Games has been the #1 games program in the world for 9 of the last 10 years. I've graduated 2,700 students in 14 and a half years of being gone from here. And last time I checked in 2014, my alumni had shipped games played by over 2.5 billion players, about 100 billion in revenue over 10 years. So anyway, some projects I've done at USC. I did a game called Immune Attack, funded by National Science Foundation with the Federation of American Scientists and Brown University. And I had two key students. My designer for this was a student, Genova Chen, who, if you know the game Journey, he founded that game company, and Flow, he was a student. Sumi Jakadar was also one of my students. He was the engineer for this project. He's the principal engineer for Call of Duty at Activision. Okay, he wrote the AI. He and one of my current PhD students wrote the AI system for all the single player parts of Call of Duty. And actually, Activision Central Technology, 75% of the people who work there are graduates who took my network games class. All right, 2006, I was on this committee, Defense Modeling Simulation Analysis, and this is for the Mathematical Sciences and their Applications Board. 2 more patents in system for encouraging user to perform substantial physical activity. Basically, this is the patent that USC should use to challenge the Microsoft Kinect, but USC doesn't do that. All right. 2007, 2008, I was on the Engineering and Physical Sciences Laboratory Assessments Board that reviewed all of the Army Research Laboratory work. 2008, Behavioral Modeling and Simulation from Individuals to Societies from the Behavioral and Social Sciences Education Board. 2009, member of this committee, which is the Division of Engineering Physical Sciences Tiger Standing Committee, which is the NRC Committee for the Intelligence Community, and put out a report called The Rise of Games and High Performance Computing for Modeling and Simulation. You can't get this study on the NRC website. My students put together a game called Trainer, which was the grand prize winner in the White House, Michelle Obama's White House competition. We submitted this. It won Best Game and won Best Overall. So we all got to go to the White House. I'm not in this picture because I took the picture, but these are the students and the other faculty member involved, and it was funded through a donation from the Humana Innovation Center. I served in this committee, which is the Board on Earth Sciences and Resources. It's the future U.S. workforce for geospatial intelligence. 2014, I think I already told you this story. Google Scientific Labs founded my startup. We built a project called Transportopia and an authoring tool that was a prototype of technology for their game Field Trip and Pokemon Go. I'm not going to show you that. 2015, opportunities for the employment of simulation in U.S. Air Force training environments. This is the Air Force Studies Board. Okay, China. 2016, I went to Xi'an, and I'm a technology advisor for the Ministry of Culture in Jiangxi Province for game and entertainment technology for the Terracotta Warrior Museum, which is a very famous museum, and the Yipang Palace site and the Jiaojing Red Army Base, if you know that. This is the caves in the rocks where Xi Jinping's father hid at the end of the Long March, if you know what the Long March is in China. This is, if you haven't seen the Terracotta Warriors, this is very cool. There are 8,000 soldiers made out of terracotta. Each face is different, each uniform is different, and it's very, very, very cool. It's like one of the 8 wonders of the world, and if you ever get a chance to go, you should go. It's very cool. I was the keynote speaker for the Silk Road Film Festival in Xi'an in 2016. 2017, I received the IEEE Virtual Reality Technical Achievement Award for fundamental work in virtual reality, networking, body tracking, and institutionalizing the application of virtual reality. Let me unpack that a little bit. The work for virtual reality networking was all done here. The work on body tracking was all done here. And institutionalizing the application of virtual reality is create the subspecialty in the Navy and the MOS, the Marine Corps, and the other part for functional area for the Army. All right, this is kind of cool. 2017, National Academy of Inventors appointed me a member. And this 2018, I was promoted IEEE Fellow for contributions to game design and networking. And this year, I'm going to try and go ASAM Fellow. We'll see. You know, it's different. 2018, I gave a talk in Xi'an. I like this. I put this poster up here because it says, "Talking is my business, listening is yours," which I think is hilarious. And I'm also co-founder of Great Wall Tiger, which is a game studio in Xi'an. I've been a consultant for a company, Giant Network, which is a game company in Shanghai. Project I mentioned in my talk 2 weeks ago here was League of Legends Bots Project, which is build a deep learning system to learn master gameplay from YouTube videos, such that you can build bots that can play League of Legends. And these are the tools we're using, straight off the shelf tools. This League of Legends project can be used for any game or any computer system you happen to get. If you don't know how to use it, you get the videos and train it. That's the whole goal of this project. We have no money for this right now. We're just doing this with directed research students. Expert witness, I should know this. I've worked as an expert witness on since 2004 through 2019 for 31 law firms, 36 cases, and 46 game and computing companies. So what I do is, so for Apple, I was their expert on the graphics hardware of the iPhone and iPad. I was the expert for Sony and NVIDIA on the graphics hardware for the PlayStation 3, basically fighting against patent trolls. And quite recently I did a continuing education course for the Los Angeles County Bar Association on games and the law. And all of the attorneys I have worked for brought them, and it was fun. Startups. One of the things that I do a lot more at USC is I'm in startups, so I listed them here. Someday I might make money with these. You know, it says so many percent, so many shares. Don't let it go to your head. Most, like 95% of these will die, but I think not all. Eon Foundation is a blockchain company. Mira Labs designed a augmented reality headset you plug your iPhone into, and there are other funding from this company from Steven Spielberg. Starter Coach is a iPhone app that lets you learn English by interacting with Americans who are reading and interacting with you via screenplays. So you get to pick apart, and people in America pick apart, and it's like Uber. So you, as an American, get $50 an hour in this app to help someone on the other end learn English. It's kind of cool. Visario is a company that has a technology for improving visual performance by changing the wavelengths of light to your eye. It's totally awesome. Our first project was we built a baseball batting game, and our test subject was Derek Jeter through Creative Artists Agency Sports, and if he would play this game for 7 to 10 minutes before he went out batting, it would improve his visual performance in tracking moving things for up to 45 minutes. So it's totally cool company. Mobile Technologies is kind of like Cambridge Analytica, but in the hands of good-hearted people. All right, so it's primarily to advertise your products in social media. AWOD is, I'm listed as chief scientist. I don't know why, I have no stock at all. AI plugins for games for education. K&K Incorporated Games for Education. I'm an external member of the board of directors. It's supposed to go IPO in Hong Kong sometime this year. I'm advisor for Chia Interactive, which is Nanjing, and Eternal Fantasyland VR Technology, which is in Nanjing, and Equally, which is Games for Education, founded by one of my former students, which has won the X Prize, this company, and it's very cool. So I'm kind of happy to do that. Okay, these companies are really cool. MarketStar, this is a predictive modeling app. I don't know if many of you remember the Total Information Awareness project from Admiral Poindexter a long time ago, which is you could go and bet on the way things are going to happen politically, or this is bet on entertainment things that are going to happen. And the funding from this is from Sergey Brin. All right. Athanos is a company that I have the lead engineer for Oculus, I have the patent attorneys for Oculus, and I have the general counsel who was the general counsel for Oculus in the Facebook acquisition. and I am their advisor on patents, so I help them write the provisional, which is filed already. And it's a very cool way to do VR without a headset. And it is absolutely awesome. The patent will be filed by June 30th. All right, I'm helping with that. It's actually all the parts of the patent that need to be written by me are done and by everybody. It's in the hands of the attorneys. Access Shape is an architecture for distributed AI. I'm drafting their patent as well. And this goes back to America's Army. The founder of this company, Jesper Jensen, was the founder of Supercomputer Gaming, which was the network service for America's Army. And he is also and that company got acquired by Electronic Arts to be their network infrastructure. And then his next company, PlayerScale, got acquired by Yahoo and became Yahoo Games. And we're doing this together. So this is in Redwood Shores. I mean, the reason I said yes to this is their company is in the same parking lot as my granddaughter's daycare, right? So I can go steal her out of daycare. All right, swimming. Okay, I still swim. I've been swimming since I'm 25 years old. I swim between 35 and 75 miles a month, which is pretty crazy if you think about that. I was in a competition in this February. I swam 75 and a half. And the one guy did 85 miles. He's 29. I'm 64, so I was good with that. I felt good. I came in number one in the age group, 60 to 69. All right, now I put this up here because if you do a Google search on me, it goes American Professors. That was the title of the talk. And people also search for Bill Cocaine,
That's funny.
who got his degree from here, but he finished his PhD at Stanford. He's a professor at Stanford now. Brand Farron was the director of Disney Imagineering and CTO for Disney that quit and told Disney to hire me as his replacement. And then one of his chief engineers for 8 years is my son. And then Danny Hillis co-founded Applied Minds with Brand. And Danny Hillis founded the Connection Machine, if you remember that a long time ago. And this one is great, Robert Whitney. Who's Robert Whitney? Does anybody know? Okay, this is great. I love this because he's the founder of USC from like way back, in the 1800s, all right? So says people also search for this. Okay, so I think that's pretty funny. I will just say, I don't know, there's 10,572 citations so far on Google. So, all right, questions. I'll do questions now.